After an earthquake, an unknown mass of fog suddenly rose beneath the city. They spread like a flood throughout the city. The mist is colorless, tasteless and non-toxic, but you can't breathe in there. 2/3 of the city's population died, but healthy people died. Terminally ill people can walk through the fog. The flight just landed. Matthew sent a video message to his daughter. When I got home, I came downstairs and I was dragging an oxygen tank. Old man Beckyson upstairs. The old man had a serious respiratory problem. Every day, lugging an oxygen tank, wherever you go. Matthew helped lift the heavy oxygen cylinder over the threshold, went upstairs and said hello to my wife. Matthew went to his daughter's room, but not so much the room, more like an isolation pod, because her daughter has a rare disease called septicemia. The body has no access to air. He's confined to the isolation module every day. After seeing my daughter, he went to the bathroom to take a bath. Suddenly the room began to shake violently. Calm returned after a few minutes. There was an earthquake. The lights in the room didn't work. The power is off. Mr. Matthew immediately asked about his daughter on the intercom. The wife has loaded the pod with batteries. The daughter is fine. Matthew went downstairs. The streets were full of sirens. He looked down the street. There was an uncharacteristically large number of birds above the street. Come to the crossroads of the 10th school, round a manhole cover. People suddenly ran in all directions in terror. Then a thick yellow fog spread out. Look down the street. A thick yellow fog several meters high. It's coming down the street. Matthew followed the crowd in the opposite direction. Return home. The daughter is safe in the pod for now. Matthew immediately pulled his wife up to the top floor. An old couple lived on the top floor. The old man opened the door. The old couple didn't know what was going on. The couple went into the room and looked out of the window. The streets have been flooded with thick fog, like a flowing river. To see this view, Matthew is on his way, and the damp cloth is blocking the door. The wife immediately picked up the intercom. Ask about your daughter. Fortunately, the daughter is safe in the pod. The wife uses a walkie-talkie. I got 4 bars left in my daughter's pod. It'll last a while until the power comes back on. Matthew took his binoculars and climbed up the drain to the roof. He saw that the whole town was covered in thick fog. It seems that the whole town has been flooded. The rooftops high above were covered with survivors. Matthew went to the stairwell again. He looked at the fog. He reached out and stirred it a few times and sniffed it. Colorless, odorless and non-toxic. Back in the room, Matthew told his wife, I had to change the batteries in my daughter's pod. But it takes 4 or 5 minutes downstairs. It'll take at least a minute to change the battery. It's impossible to hold your breath the whole time. Suddenly, Matthew thought of old Mr. Beckyson he had met downstairs this morning. He tows his oxygen tank every day. I'm sure you have a spare at home. And the old man's house is downstairs. Holding his breath for short periods of time is something Matthew can do. So he did what he said. Matthew opens the window, climbed down the drain and into the downstairs window. Matthew took a deep breath and entered the room. The room was already filled with thick fog. The old man choked to death in his room. After some searching by Matthew, the oxygen mask was finally found in a corner. Matthew quickly put it on, took a few gulps of oxygen, as Matthew loaded his oxygen tank, and prepared to go downstairs. What sounds like a noise coming from a room in the back? Matthew picked up his hammer, and opened the door carefully. It was a lively little suckling dog. But here's the amazing thing, the puppy ran out of the room completely undisturbed by the fog, and the mother dog died on the carpet in the room. The whole city was inundated by a fog of unknown origin. Countless residents died. The survivors smashed their heads to get to higher ground, and the fog is rising at a rate of several centimeters per hour. To distract her air-deprived daughter, the couple dived into the thick fog. Matthew had no time to think. He immediately went downstairs to find his daughter, brought her food and new batteries for the pod. To calm her daughter's heart, Matthew told his daughter that rescue teams would arrive soon. Tell your daughter to hold on. Out of the room, Matthew, who was going upstairs, suddenly turned and went downstairs. He wanted to see the street at the bottom of the fog. The whole street was dead. Visibility is less than 2 meters. Matthew walked down the street. The road was littered with bodies choked to death by the fog. Matthew stole some batteries under a car. Suddenly he heard voices not far away. Matthew raced on. It turned out that rescue teams were evacuating the remaining survivors. They're moving the survivors to Montmartre, where the terrain is high. It was not invaded by the fog. The rescuers told Matthew to follow along. But Matthew's wife and daughter are here. Rescuers have been unable to carry out rescue efforts. Matthew could not go, so he asked rescuers for an oxygen mask, and went back. Evening, Matthew went outside again to check the height of the fog. He told his wife, the fog is rising at the rate of several centimeters an hour. Look at the outside. It's estimated that 2/3 of the people in Paris are dead, which means the cops can't show up, the doctor can't be counted on, and no electricians to restore power. Everything is on your own. The wife tossed and turned all night. She came downstairs wearing an oxygen mask, put batteries in her daughter's pod before she went upstairs to sleep. Wait until Matthew wakes up. The wife has fixed the broken radio. The government has issued emergency evacuation orders at every station. This is not a good place to stay. The couple went to the roof to see what was going on in the distance. In the telescope, fires were burning in Montmartre in the distance. It was crowded with heads as far as the eye could see. Chaos. Looks like Montmartre's not gonna make it. Wife proposal. We can go to our daughter's friend Charlotte's. Her home is high enough to have escaped the fog, and he's on good terms with his family. Charlotte's parents will take them in, and more importantly, Charlotte has the same disease as her daughter. The daughter can share the pod with Charlotte. But we need to find a protective suit before we can do that. The daughter's body cannot touch the air. But such suits are expensive and rare. The patients usually rent it on a rotating basis, and only in the lab building downtown. A round trip takes an hour and a half. So Matthew starts to get his gear on and get ready to go. But the lab moved. Wife was afraid that her husband would be lost, and that she knew the place well. So they went together, go out of the building. The two men went out into the street. It didn't go very far. I came across a big wolf dog that had broken loose. They ran away at once. However, in the fog of visual obstruction, Matthew escaped the dog by jumping into the water. But the dog turned and ran after her again. The wife ducked into a bus. Fortunately, the dog's leash got stuck. The wife escaped by breaking the window. Her husband, who watched her fall into the water, did not respond. The vicious dog is still barking. His wife had to follow the map to find the downtown laboratory building. And this side, Matthew also slowly climbed out of the water. Found a corpse suit to wear to keep out the cold. Came to the laboratory building and his wife. Two people came to the experimental building in the dark by flashlight, wife by memory. The pair successfully found protective clothing in a laboratory box. Then he started walking back without stopping. But when I went through a door, laboratory explosion, huge flames opened down the gate and the two men were blown out. They awoke after a pause. His wife found Matthew on fire. A fire extinguisher was immediately called to put out the flames. I thought I was finally over it. Matthew suddenly had difficulty breathing. Touch it with your hand. The oxygen line was burned out. In desperation, the wife took off her own oxygen pump. Matthew takes a couple of puffs. Again they supported each other and went upstairs. Finally, and hold on for a while. Two people came to the top floor of the experimental building. Thankfully, it's safe for now without the fog. The city was inundated with thick fog. The elderly couple on the roof were sleeping hand in hand in the thick fog. The mother died trying to save her daughter in the pod while changing the battery. My father passed out on the street stealing protective clothing. Then something miraculous happened. The daughter got out of the pod unharmed, appeared downstairs in the thick fog. His wife brought medicine to help Matthew heal his burned back. The two men straightened up a little before they left. Matthew found that the wife was running out of oxygen. There's not enough time for both of us to go back. Mr. Matthew told his wife to go home for now. Stay here and try to get back. But for now, there is no other way. After saying goodbye, the wife left with a hazmat suit, even though the oxygen in the tank is depleted. But in the nick of time, the wife or the smooth returned to the top floor of the room. But open the box and look. The suit was destroyed by the flames. The wife collapsed and fell to the ground. Matthew here is slowly moving along the roof toward his home. On one of the rooftops, he found an oxygen unit in the corner. Matthew immediately put it on himself. Just about to leave, the owner of the equipment is back. He is a policeman. He got this oxygen bottle from beating the other survivors to death. Not much was said. The police are about to shoot. Matthew immediately tackled the policeman in the smoke downstairs. I choked a cop alive before I left. The wife found her daughter on the top floor. The pod is down to 10%. His wife, who had no oxygen, took a deep breath, went downstairs and put batteries in the pod. But when my daughter calls, her mother could not talk to her. After saying goodbye, the daughter called for her mother over the intercom, heard by the returning Matthew. He hurried down the stairs in search of his wife. Found his wife dead at the corner of the stairs. Back to the top floor, facing a question on her daughter's intercom. Matthew was too upset to speak. He went out on the balcony to compose himself for a moment before he told his daughter the truth. Watching the fog keep rising, it's about to reach the top floor. Matthew began planning his escape route again. Then, there was an earthquake. The shaking house struck fear into Matthew's heart. He came out to the balcony to look. Sure enough, the height of the fog rose sharply. He told the old man, "The square is not far from here." He saw a truck on his way back. There are military protective suits inside. If you modify it, I can give it to my daughter. He's also gonna get oxygen masks for the two old people. But the old man told Matthew didn't need to work for them anymore. He knew his son was dead too. Neither he nor his wife had many days left to live. They don't want to leave the place where they've lived all their lives. He was happy to die here with his wife. I mean, it's a fallen leaf. I got what the old man wanted. Matthew didn't stay much longer. The fog crept in through the cracks in the windows. The old couple lay on the bed arm in arm. They closed their eyes slowly, smiling together in the face of impending death. It was a happy moment for them, looking at the two old people, watching my daughter drown in the emotion of losing her mother. He went out with his oxygen mask on. Matthew went to the square and found the truck, opened the door and found the suit. He found another motorbike that could drive. He sped home with his protective suit. Suddenly a little boy rushed out from behind the car. Matthew was hiding from the boy. It crashed into a nearby car, and was thrown out and fainted on the ground. Wake up again. Matthew dragged his broken leg, limping back on the road carrying the suit. But exhaustion and a head injury, not 2 steps. He collapsed on the ground, in a daze. Matthew seemed to see 2 men coming out of the fog not far away. Matthew managed to get to his feet again, as the two get closer and closer. This time he saw clearly, it was the daughter and his friend Noah. What is unexpected is that the abortive daughter was surprisingly immune to the fog. They had never been able to touch the air, but they were able to travel freely through the fog. When Matthew woke up again, he found himself sleeping in his daughter's pod. From now on, Matthew will have to stay in the dark chamber as his daughter did before. Looks like he's the one with the septic condition. A dog chained up in a film. The daughter who lives in the pod. Their lives that were once bound. Now I have freedom, but those who once had freedom, have healthy people, but now it cannot escape the fog. By making such a counterintuitive assumption, the director wants to warn us to protect the environment. Cherish every freedom that you have now.